Mr. Festival Eric Donaldson receives the Icon Award. The Land of My Birth singer, known for winning the festival song competition an impressive 7 times.
What really happened to Eric Donaldson, the reggae legend behind Cherry O Baby? Picture this. A young man from Kent Village, Jamaica, writes a song so catchy that the Rolling Stones and UB40 can't resist covering it. That's Eric's legacy, but his story didn't stop with one hit. He became Mr. Festival, winning Jamaica's top song competition again and again, while building a career that reached from Kingston to Brazil. In this video, we'll break down Eric's life, career highs, and where he is now. So, let's talk about the man who turned persistence into reggae history. A short stroll to Bog Walk. Imagine a boy in a quiet Jamaican village, strumming a guitar late at night while the rest of the world sleeps. No spotlight, no audience, just determination and the dream of turning sound into something bigger than himself. That boy was Eric Donaldson, long before he became known as Mr. Festival, and long before Cherry O Baby turned into a global anthem. Eric Donaldson came into the world on June 11, 1947, in Kent Village, a small community just outside Bog Walk in St. Catherine, Jamaica. Kent Village wasn't exactly the kind of place you'd expect to give rise to a reggae giant. It was a rural area where most families worked hard to make ends meet. But it was also rich in the kinds of cultural traditions that shape musicians. Church gatherings filled with song, community celebrations pulsing with rhythm, and neighbors who never needed an excuse to break into harmony. For young Eric, these sounds weren't just background noise. They were lessons. He was soaking it all in, without even realizing that he was training his ear for the career ahead. Music in mid-century Jamaica wasn't just entertainment, it was storytelling, it was protest, it was joy. Children grew up surrounded by it, and Eric was no exception. His family was close-knit, rooted in simple values, and supportive of his interest in music, even when it seemed like just a hobby. Like a lot of kids his age, he didn't grow up with expensive instruments or formal lessons. What he did have was curiosity and a stubborn streak. He taught himself guitar, often at night when chores were finally done. Think about that level of drive. While most of us would collapse into bed after a day of hard work or school, Eric was sitting there plucking strings, training his fingers to find the right notes. It wasn't glamorous, but it was the beginning of something lasting. To understand Eric Donaldson's childhood, you also need to understand the Jamaica he grew up in. The 1940s and 1950s were times of big changes. The island was still under British rule when Eric was born, but independence was coming in the next couple of decades. The music of Jamaica reflected those shifts. You had mento and ska paving the way for what would eventually become reggae. Communities like Kent Village might not have had recording studios, but they had a heartbeat powered by drums, guitars, and voices. Little Eric was growing up right in the middle of this cultural storm. He wasn't just hearing melodies, he was witnessing a nation building its sound. As a boy, Eric went through school like any other child in his area. Education was important, but it wasn't the only thing shaping him. In small villages, life outside the classroom often carried as much weight as what happened inside. You learned discipline from chores, you learned community from gatherings, and you learned resilience from seeing how hard your parents worked to keep things together. For Eric, those lessons would eventually translate into the discipline needed to push through in music. Teaching yourself guitar is one thing, but teaching yourself persistence is another. That came straight out of Kent Village life. By his teenage years, it was clear Eric had a knack for rhythm. While some kids chased cricket balls or dreamed of moving to Kingston for jobs, Eric was chasing chords. He was the type to sit with a guitar until the notes made sense. At first, his playing was probably rough. Everyone starts that way, but he kept at it. With each late-night session, his fingers grew stronger, his ears sharper, and his confidence a little bigger. There weren't any big recording contracts waiting for him in Kent Village. No scouts were roaming around looking for the next superstar. But Eric had something better, the patience to stick with it. Kent Village wasn't cut off from the wider world of music. Even in rural areas, Jamaicans had access to radios and record players, which meant Eric could hear American R&B, soul, and the early ska beats that were bubbling in Kingston. He was hearing Sam Cooke, Ray Charles, and the Skatalites. These influences gave him a wide palette to pull from, blending foreign sounds with the rhythms of his homeland. For a young musician, that kind of mix is gold. It meant Eric's ears were tuned to more than one style, giving him the foundation to create something fresh down the line. By the late 1960s, Eric had the skills and confidence to take his passion beyond Kent Village. But before stepping onto bigger stages, he had to build himself from the ground up. That meant hours of quiet practice, endless trial and error, and a commitment most people wouldn't have noticed at the time. His beginnings weren't flashy. He wasn't a child prodigy with crowds begging for encores. He was just a determined kid with a guitar, teaching himself how to turn raw talent into real music. And that, in many ways, makes his rise even more impressive. Eric Donaldson's childhood may not have been filled with glitz, but it gave him something better: grit. Growing up in Kent Village taught him discipline, exposed him to music everywhere he turned, and forced him to be resourceful. By the time he was ready to step into Jamaica's music scene, he wasn't some random kid hoping to get lucky. He was prepared. Career beginnings. Every legend has a moment when the world finally sits up and listens. For Eric Donaldson, that moment came with a simple, infectious tune that started in Jamaica and ended up echoing from Kingston to London to New York. The funny thing, before that breakthrough, he faced more rejection than a guy trying to crash a wedding without an invitation. In 1964, Eric walked into Studio One, the powerhouse of Jamaican music, ready to make his mark. This was the same studio where icons like Bob Marley and the Skatalites were shaping the future of reggae. Imagine the nerves. But instead of walking out with a career-launching single, Eric walked out with nothing. Producer Clement Dodd, who had an ear for hits, didn't think Eric's material was ready. Harsh? Yes. The end of the road? Not at all. That first setback could have crushed him. Plenty of young musicians gave up after one bad review. Eric didn't. He took the rejection, kept working, and found another way forward. By the mid-1960s, Eric teamed up with Leslie Burke and Hector Brooks to form a vocal group called the West Indians. The trio brought harmonies, heart, and hustle to the scene. Their persistence paid off in 1968 when they scored a hit with Right on Time, produced by J.J. Johnson. For a moment, it looked like the group might become the next big thing. But as with a lot of early groups, success didn't stick. They even tried rebranding, switching their name to the Kilowatts, and working with none other than Lee "Scratch" Perry. Yes, that Perry, the eccentric genius who was producing groundbreaking tracks left and right. Still, lightning didn't strike again. The Kilowatts fizzled, and Eric found himself back at square one. Here's where Eric's story really takes off. Instead of giving up, he decided to go solo, and in 1971, he brought a song called Cherry O Baby to Jamaica's Festival Song Competition. Now, let's pause here. If you've never heard of the Festival Song Competition, it's a big deal. Every year, artists submit original songs that celebrate Jamaican pride, culture, and identity. Winning it can launch careers and earn you a place in the nation's musical history. Eric didn't just win in 1971, he blew people away. Cherry O Baby was fresh, catchy, and impossible not to sing along with. Overnight, Eric went from a struggling artist to a household name. That first win was only the beginning. Eric returned again and again, stacking up victories like trophies on a shelf. Over the years, he claimed the top spot 6 times. At this point, you could argue he turned the contest into his personal concert series. Other artists probably showed up, saw Eric's name on the entry list, and thought, well, there goes my summer. Cherry O Baby wasn't just a Jamaican hit. It spread. The Rolling Stones covered it on their 1976 album Black and Blue. UB40 recorded their own version in 1983 for Labor of Love. By then, the tune had crossed genres and borders, proving its staying power. Cover versions kept piling up, over 30 in total, with Eric himself re-recording it in updated styles. That's rare. Most songs fade into the background after a decade or two. Cherry O Baby became a reggae standard, instantly recognizable and endlessly adaptable. While Cherry O Baby is the track most people remember, another one of Eric's songs holds a special place in Jamaican history. In 1978, he performed Land of My Birth, a patriotic anthem written by Winston Wallace. Decades later, in a 2013 online poll run by the Jamaica Cultural Development Commission, that song was voted the most popular festival song winner of all time. Think about that. Out of all the entries, across decades of music and hundreds of performers, the people chose Eric's rendition as the defining festival anthem. That's more than success, it's cultural impact. So, why did Eric Donaldson connect with audiences the way he did? Part of it was his voice, smooth, soulful, and distinct. Part of it was his songwriting. His songs were simple enough to stick in your head, but meaningful enough to stir pride. And part of it was timing. Eric's career was blooming at a moment when Jamaica was finding its identity on the world stage, and his songs gave people a soundtrack for that pride. It's easy to stop the story with Cherry O Baby, but Eric's career spanned decades. He released multiple albums, kept competing, and kept performing. His persistence was as important as his talent. He didn't quit after failures, he didn't fade away after one hit, and he kept showing up, even when the industry changed. Eric Donaldson's rise wasn't smooth. He faced rejection, setbacks, and career stalls, but every time, he came back stronger. That resilience is what turned him from a kid in Kent Village with a guitar into a man whose music crossed oceans and generations. Later, career. Most artists dream of dropping 1 or 2 albums in their lifetime. Eric Donaldson, he's out here treating albums like annual holiday decorations. Another year, another release. The man who gave Jamaica its unofficial anthems isn't slowing down, not even in his 70s. If anything, he's proving that reggae legends don't retire, they just keep hitting record. By the time the 1980s rolled around, Eric had already secured his reputation as the king of the festival song stage. Hits like Cherry O Baby and Land of My Birth made him a household name in Jamaica. But here's the thing, he didn't rest on those wins. Instead, he set his sights on something bigger, building a catalog that stretched far beyond contest tracks. Throughout the 80s, Eric kept writing, recording, and releasing music. While reggae's spotlight often shone on names like Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, and later Gregory Isaacs, Eric was carving out his own lane. He wasn't the loudest voice, but he was consistent. Album after album kept his sound alive, and songs like Cinderella started catching fire outside Jamaica, especially in places you wouldn't expect. Let's talk about Brazil. For reasons that probably deserve a music documentary of their own, Eric Donaldson became a superstar there. When he tours, fans don't just clap politely, they demand encores of the same song. Cinderella is so beloved that Eric has to perform it 2 or 3 times in one show just to satisfy the crowd. That's dedication on both sides. Meanwhile, back home in Jamaica, he admits the airwaves weren't always kind. But instead of sulking, he leaned into his international fan base and kept moving. Even in recent years, Eric hasn't slowed down. In 2018, he put out an album called Control Your Temper on his own Cosmic label. The 10-track set didn't get the radio love he hoped for, but instead of throwing in the towel, Eric did what he always does. He went back to work. When asked why he's always creating, his answer is simple. There are too many songs in his head not to share them. He even admitted that he has a lot of songs Jamaican people never hear. So, while some artists complain about lack of exposure, Eric just shrugs and heads back to the studio. Here's the wild part. Eric has released 27 albums so far, and he's currently working on number 28. Yes, you read that right, 27. Most artists would be lucky to squeeze out half that number. His goal? To keep releasing 1 album per year. Think about that for a second. At an age when most folks are looking for a comfy chair and a quiet porch, Eric is still aiming to outwork the next generation. His latest project, still untitled at the time of his interview, might even be named after one of its standout tracks, I Am in Love. Eric planned to have it out in time for Jamaica's independence celebrations, and if that didn't happen, then Christmas would do just fine. Whether it's August or December, the man is still hustling like it's day one. Donaldson doesn't just record, he still takes the stage, though less frequently in Jamaica than abroad. One of his more recent local appearances was at a charity concert called Powerful Women and Men, performed for charity at Kingston's National Indoor Sports Center. For Eric, it wasn't just another gig, it was a way to give back. He admitted it felt good to support a worthy cause while sharing his classics. And yes, those classics still find their way into every set list. They've become cultural touchstones, songs that generations of Jamaicans connect to instantly. Personal life. Unlike many of his peers who migrated to the United States, Donaldson forged a different path. Instead of settling in Florida or New York, he set his sights further south, Brazil. The reggae icon embraced life there with remarkable openness, becoming a legal resident while still proudly holding on to his Jamaican citizenship. This dual connection gave him a unique identity, one foot rooted in the land of his birth, the other exploring the rhythm of South America. Brazil, as it turns out, wasn't just a convenient stop on tour, it became a second home. Every year, between September and November, Donaldson makes his way there after the rainy season to perform across the country. He admits that his music is not only well received, but celebrated, with audiences eager to embrace his soulful voice and timeless songs. These concerts keep him connected to a new generation of fans who may have first heard his work through international covers, but now know him as the original source of that sweet reggae sound. His ties to Brazil, however, extend far beyond music. Donaldson fathered a son there, one of his 8 children, and that connection has deepened his roots in the country. At 15, his Brazilian son remains in school there, and Donaldson has chosen to let him finish his education before considering whether to bring him to Jamaica. This chapter of his life highlights another side of the legend, the father, the man balancing multiple homes, families, and responsibilities while maintaining his love for music. Donaldson has never shied away from discussing his romantic connections and family life. Known as a charming yet grounded individual, he has had relationships that have spanned across borders, leaving him with a family tree that is as international as his music. His children are scattered between Jamaica and Brazil, each representing a piece of his journey. While his career kept him on the road, his deep commitment to fatherhood shows in the way he speaks proudly of his sons and daughters. Beyond family and music, Donaldson also describes himself as a jack of all trades. In his own words, he has dabbled in everything from tailoring to painting, cooking, plumbing, and even working as a mechanic. Yet, despite all these skills, he insists that music is his true calling, the one craft he has mastered fully. That dedication to art has kept him producing, performing, and sharing songs that continue to influence the reggae landscape. Unlike some artists who rest on their past accomplishments, Donaldson sees his role as bigger than entertainment. He believes music should spark positive change, a belief that shapes the lyrics he writes and the performances he gives. His songs are messages of hope, love, and social consciousness. In this way, Donaldson has always been more than a performer. He has been a voice for cultural reflection and community healing. Today, even as reggae continues to evolve, Eric Donaldson remains a symbol of the genre's golden era and its ongoing relevance. His decision to split his life between Jamaica and Brazil speaks to his adventurous spirit and willingness to adapt, while his dedication to his children shows a man deeply invested in legacy. Not just musically, but personally. Inspiring legacy. One tune about a sweetheart hopped the ocean, crashed the rock charts, and turned a village guitarist into the guy your favorite bands quietly thank. That ripple came from Eric Donaldson. Eric wrote sing-along anthems that feel like sunshines and stubborn hope. His melodies are simple to grasp and hard to forget. That is why his work keeps moving between reggae, rock, and pop. The clearest proof is the life of his signature hit. It won Jamaica's Festival Song Contest in 1971, then kept traveling. Years later, the Rolling Stones cut their own version, and the song kept growing when UB40 recorded it for a best-selling covers album. Those new audiences met Eric through their speakers and then went hunting for the original. The Rolling Stones lifted the track onto a major rock album in 1976, placing a reggae hook in front of stadium crowds and rock radio. That move helped normalize reggae rhythms for listeners who had never touched a Studio One record. UB40 turned the same song into a UK hit in the 80s. Their entry reached the UK Singles Chart Top 20 and kept the hook alive for a new decade. The band has publicly saluted Eric as the source, and they still tell the story of why that tune matters to them. This is not a one-off. Journalists in Jamaica have noted that the rhythm stayed popular for decades, with many covers and updates beyond those two marquee names. Legacy is not hype when other artists keep recording your song. It is evidence. Inside Jamaica, Eric's record at the Festival Song Competition did more than earn trophies. His entries set a standard for catchy hooks with real pride in the lyrics. Two of his best-loved entries came in the late 70s and still feel like hometown anthems. In a public poll run by the National Culture Agency in 2013, One of those tracks was ranked the favorite in the history of the contest. That kind of result shows how his work shaped taste on the island and still shapes how new contestants write today. Influence also shows up in the way a country thanks you. In 20, the Jamaican state honored Eric for his service to music. That is the system saying out loud that his catalog helped define national culture. Eric's songs found fertile ground in Brazil. He performs there often, where crowds request deep cuts as if they are radio staples. That demand shaped his touring life and proves that his songwriting translates far beyond English-speaking audiences. When a tune asks to be played twice in one show, you know it's stuck. Big rock acts covering a Jamaican sing-along in the 70s showed younger bands that they could mix styles without losing themselves. When the Stones and UB40 did it, they widened the lane for artists who later folded reggae grooves into pop and rock. Eric's tune was a safe door to walk through. His festival winners are tight, hook-heavy, and built for crowds. That approach still guides contestants and veteran band leaders who craft entries for the stage each year. Groups tied to the competition talk openly about how these songs anchor the show and the tradition. Eric kept releasing records well into recent years and spoke about still writing new material. That work ethic tells young singers to keep going, even if gatekeepers look the other way. The national press covered his later releases and his plans, which in turn keeps his example in front of the next wave. Your audience hears Eric even when they think they are hearing someone else. That is legacy. When a chorus you wrote becomes a gateway for people to love a whole genre, you change how radio sounds, how concerts feel, and how new writers approach the blank page. What happened to him? Picture a reggae icon pouring a cold drink at a tiny bar in the hills, then stepping outside to chat with neighbors who still call him by his first name. That is Eric Donaldson in real life. Eric Donaldson keeps roots deep in Kent Village and St. Catherine. He did not trade home for a condo in Miami. He lives in the same community that shaped his voice and his values. Music sites and reference pages note that he still resides in Kent Village. Several also point to a small spot he runs there called the Cherry O Baby Go-Go Bar, a tip of the hat to his most famous tune. That bar is more than a sign on a wall. It is a meeting place. Fans pass through to say hello. Travelers snap photos. Videos online show the location, and locals treat it like part of the village map. For a singer who took a chorus from Jamaica to stadium speakers, the choice to stay close to home says a lot. Home base never kept him still. In a major interview, Donaldson talked about life across 2 countries. He became a legal resident in Brazil while keeping his Jamaican documents. Each year he travels there for shows, often in the fall after the rains. He says crowds know his catalog and ask for deep cuts. Brazil turned into a second family for the music, as well as for the man. Even while he splits time, the Kent Village link remains strong. The National Information Service recorded that he formed and managed youth clubs in his community. That work fits the image many Jamaicans know. Quiet, steady, and focused on giving the next generation a push. The honors arrived too. In 20, the government of Jamaica named him to the Order of Distinction in the rank of Officer for Service to Music. It was official recognition that his songs helped define national pride. Multiple records confirm the award and list his name among the honorees that year. Now for the part every YouTube viewer asks. Is he still recording? Yes. He never stopped. In 2018, he released Control Your Temper on his own label. 2 years later, the press reported that he dropped a new set titled I Am in Love, and that he kept planning fresh projects. He talked openly about putting out more albums even when radio spins at home felt light. That work rate shows why his career keeps rolling long after many peers stepped back. Daily life feels simple by design. He spends time with family, he checks on the bar, he writes, he rehearses for trips to Brazil. He still pulls the classics into any set list. Cherry O Baby remains a must-sing moment. Festival anthems like Land of My Birth and Sweet Jamaica still draw smiles from elders and new fans. The global covers gave those songs longer legs, but the originals still live best in his voice. Why does this matter for your audience? Because it shows what success can look like for a veteran artist who picks community over flash. The story is not a comeback, it is a choice. He keeps a foothold in the village that shaped him. He grows audiences in Brazil where the love is loud and loyal. He takes state honors with humility and still heads back to the studio like a rookie with something to prove. From a humble village in Jamaica to international stages, Eric Donaldson carved his own path, one soulful lyric and timeless melody at a time. His voice wasn't just about entertainment, it carried culture, pride, and the heartbeat of a nation. Songs like Cherry O Baby didn't just win competitions, they became anthems that inspired generations, shaping reggae's global reach and ensuring that his music would live far beyond the years it was written. Today, whether he is running his beloved bar in Kent Village, spending time with family, or simply enjoying the rhythm of everyday life, Eric Donaldson continues to represent resilience, artistry, and authenticity. His legacy reminds us that music is more than sound. It's memory, its identity, and its history wrapped into melody. So, what do you think Eric Donaldson's greatest contribution to reggae has been? Is it his unforgettable songs, his role in shaping Jamaican culture, or simply the way his story continues to inspire? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your take. And if you enjoyed diving into his journey, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more stories about music legends, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a beat. Because Eric Donaldson's journey may be one man's life, but his music, that belongs to all of us.